Thank you very much.
That's all right. Did you want to see if you like it first? I mean, it's boiling hot, so be careful. Don't know how it stays out.
It's really nice. It's really warming.
It's lovely.
It tastes quite fruity, even though...
But it's chamomile, I think, so it's still a little bit floral, like...
Because I don't normally like that floral, but it's not, like, majorly botanical. Like, it's really nice. Okay.
We're saying that we feel sometimes that we feel obliged.
Why do we put boundaries in place?
Yeah, you feel like obliged to do something. Someone else has set the pace, or someone else has set the kind of rule book, and then you're following that.
Yeah,
and you're not really thinking about why you're doing it or how that affects you,
or whether it's the right thing to do. Yeah, and that's because we get so used to the different systems that we have in place that we just don't question anything, and so then there's not any change, even if it doesn't suit the way that we work.
Yeah, you're like, almost like fear comes into it and emotions come into it because you're worried of saying no to something, or you get guilty, and that can really feed into things quite like heavily, I think, when it comes to decision making, especially if you're trying to run like something, or you're trying to organise something, and if you have
trying to keep people happy, it's a lot about other people and how they feel.
You lose your gut instinct in the process a little bit because you're listening to everyone else's. I think
exactly.
That can be,
and also it's a lot to do with what I would call filters, because you basically, whatever's happened in your life has shaped you and what you think people's expectations of you are. And it's easy to kind of let that skew your viewpoint. And projecting onto other people so that you feel that you think you know what people want, and maybe they don't actually even want those things, but you're so worried about pleasing them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that comes into it a lot. I think also when you believe those things so strongly that the idea of doing the opposite is just it's not a realistic kind of solution in your mind at that time. Is it? It's like,
exactly. So I suppose that leads us on to talking about what are the consequences of doing those things.
What does it look like when you don't have any of those boundaries? Like when you're saying yes to everything and you're left feeling completely depleted, lack of energy, and I mean, it looks like you sometimes say yes to everything and you're overcommitting yourself. And then at the last minute you're like, you can't then deliver it because you're completely, you've said yes to too many things. You've put too many deadlines in place. Potentially maybe you're launching like some products, or you've decided you're going to release a new project, and you don't think about realistic sort of time frames within that because you're busy thinking of how this affects everything else, comparing yourself to other projects maybe, or other people.
So setting your own boundaries, like, because you're saying yes to yourself and you're pushing, so it's not just about other people, but it's about the own impact of yourself. If you feel like you set your boundaries really high,
goals, I guess.
Your goals really high, and then don't leave room to reflect on that.
They're not realistic. They're just too much. I think also it can leave you with little confidence, because if you're constantly like underachieving your own goals, so you constantly see yourself failing your own goals, that can have quite a damaging effect, and then reinforce all those beliefs that you have to please others, and you have to do that, and it's a vicious cycle, really. And they all play into each other.
Exactly. And I think that also affects how other people view you, so then they see you as not confident, and
you perceive them seeing you as not confident, and you perceive them seeing you as not meeting any deadlines, when sometimes no one realises you have those deadlines. They're all your own deadlines.
Exactly.
But if you then start working with other people, of course that then feeds into it. But it has such a negative impact, doesn't it, when you sort of realise you've said yes to everything, that you're like, you're not really giving 100% of yourself at the end of the day, like when you are then delivering it, because
you lose all the fun out of what you're doing as well, because you don't get the time to do the things that are the creative things and the things that you started your business for.
And you have to ask yourself, like, what do I want to spend my time doing?
Exactly. And so why am I where are my priorities? What is important to the business?
Where do I want to see my energy being spent? Like, what things would make this, you know, I've obviously set out to achieve something by doing something, but what is it that's going to actually deliver that? Like, what is it that I want to spend my time on doing to deliver that?
Exactly.
Like, if I'm creating a load of say a load of new products, I don't want to spend all of my time scrolling on Instagram comparing myself to a load of other businesses that have just released a load of products. I want to be spending my time designing, or I want to be spending my time like actually doing the work itself, or you've thought of a new project that you want to start running, and then you see someone else has done something similar or something like that. That's not how you want to spend your time, worrying that someone else has done something.
Exactly.
It doesn't.
And in the work that I do, when I'm like advocating for mental health and I'm suggesting, you know, you should be resting, you should have work-life balance, and then all of a sudden recently I've realised, well, that's fine, I'm saying all these things, but I really have to do them, not just because it's what I say is the right thing to do, but because I know it's the right thing to do. And so it's not reflecting on what I actually believe in and what the morals are behind the work that I do.
It's so difficult when you know full well what is the good thing that you need to do, but actually doing it is
another ball game.
It's like it takes like, or saying like it takes like accountability in a certain way. You have to be accountable to yourself, actually holding up those things.
Definitely.
And then like having agency over how you work as well. I think you were saying, Sarah, that like you have certain tips and tricks that you kind of want to implement, like putting together a wrap. What was the wrap thing you were talking about?
Yeah, so there's two different versions really. There's the wrap, which is kind of that what you would use in a work situation, working. I can't remember what it's actually called, but I can add that in at the bottom. But
wellness action plan, wasn't it, or wellness and recovery
action plan. That's it. I'm really bad with words, hence why I'm an artist. But so that kind of, that's from a mental health point of view really. So you would suggest this is what it might look like when I am unwell. This is the support that I would need. And I mean, from my point of view, it would include things like breaks, lunch breaks, and support from other members of staff, like not being left on your own. So it doesn't include necessarily anything that isn't reasonable for people, but it's more like as a conversation starter.
It could even be like an out of office email or a social media post that kind of preempts you know, like how you work. So if someone's demanding something of you, or potentially if you have an Etsy shop or something, like a kind of notification on there or something like that just kind of lets people know that actually you will get to it, but you might not respond immediately because you're, you know, working on other projects. Or it's just having that, you know, reassurance that you're not having to respond to someone immediately just because they've demanded it.
Exactly. It's the expectations, isn't it, like you said.
If they've set a kind of like a pace initially, and they've said, you know, like they've emailed you at a really unrealistic time, or they've demanded something in a really unrealistic time frame, doesn't mean that there needs to that is okay, or that has to be. Obviously there's some situations which are really like completely needing to be within a deadline. This isn't really about that. This is more when someone's just demanding it,
and it all comes back to other people and not wanting to upset other people. And I think that's important that you kind of detach from it being about an emotion and a person, and kind of make it about the task rather than actually thinking, oh, that person's gonna think X, Y, and Z. Like, you know, it's
saying no to the action, not the person.
Exactly. And I think like along with that, there's also I feel the need to, like, if I say something, I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna do it no matter what. And I think it is okay to kind of go back on a yes with a no. You know, you can actually change your mind, and the situation can change, therefore what you're capable of.
And also giving yourself a bit more time to respond as well. If someone's demanding something, like there is the opportunity of just saying like, can I just get back to you tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or, like I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know my answer right now. Like can I respond tomorrow when I've had a time to think about it? Or just not even giving it a date, like just saying I need some time to think about this. And like that can be like really rewarding, because you're then realizing, oh, okay, I have some respect over my time frame now.
Exactly. And it also shows that it is something that you care about and want to engage with, but you just need the space to do it. So I don't think I would ever be upset with anyone asking for more time unless there was a specific like deadline that was really imperative. And then again, it's about putting that back on to the other person, because obviously if they're getting in touch with you because they've got a short deadline, you have to think, well, that's the situation they've been put into. It's not necessarily my responsibility.
Yeah. And like reviewing how you're like going back to how you're spending your time, and like reviewing it and being kind of proactive within that. So actually listing all the projects or the tasks that you have currently going on.
You said you've got a great way of doing that.
Yeah, sort of like put them all at the top, like different projects or different roles or different jobs, and then rating them all like out of 10 like on happiness or confidence or satisfaction. If something's like regularly rating quite low within being that I'm actually satisfied doing, then it goes. Like I don't think that, you know, that you want to be spending your time on things that are doing good and not
it's funny because normally you prioritise literally to do with time. So you prioritise projects to do with time and can I fit it in, and like, but actually prioritising based upon what you're getting from it that you know, that's not necessarily monetary, or you know, we all have to do things for the sake of money, but also
it just puts it back into perspective, doesn't it? It just puts it back into like, okay, this is taking up the majority of my time, but does it deserve the amount of time it's currently occupying?
Exactly.
Is it paying my bills essentially as well? Is this something I'm spending all my time doing and I'm getting no happiness from it? Also, it's not paying any of my bills. I'm really, it's making then it's like time to go and review that and be, you know, is there a way of wiggling around that so that it's not occupying all of my space and my time?
I think it all comes back to the why. Like, why are you doing this in the first place? And obviously there are so many different reasons as to why you might be doing something. And again, like strengthening your own, for want of a better word, like brand, like so people really know what you're about and what and you really know what you're about.
We were saying that, weren't we? We were saying if you set a sort of precedent, is that the right word? Precedent for how you work, you find that actually people do respect that, and they do. It helps them too as well. If you sort of like, we found that before, haven't we? We said, oh, we'll have a think about that, or the studio is dissolving around us.
It's no good having white tack and a window open.
Paper avalanche. No, it affects everyone around you and all the people that you're working with if you're able to bring in these new measures and look after like the well-being of yourself. It's the worst thing if you get to this point, you know, where you're actually working for yourself and you're doing it. You're like you've achieved that massive thing of ownership over a business or running your own thing, and then you realise that you have no control over it. That's not ultimately what you wanted in the first place. You wanted to be able to, you know, spend more time doing the things that are really rewarding and are helpful and don't leave you feeling really damaged.
Exactly. And I think when we had a chat about this before, we talked about letting people actually know what your boundaries are.
Communicating it.
Because otherwise I kept saying, oh, why do people not respect my boundaries? And then I realised that I actually hadn't been very clear about what they were. So you have to be quite confident and clear in setting your own boundaries, and like, how do you do that in a nice way? Then you don't feel
Is that how you spell it?
Communicating? I think so.
Two dyslexics.
So when we started thinking about this, I did set up an out of office, and I did actually suggest to people that they needed to email me through a different email address, because I realised that I needed to set that up and have that, because how can I expect people to respect that boundary between private and business when I don't have the option for them to do that? So I think it's starting out with quite small things, and like, I don't feel like I'm an expert on any of this stuff that we're talking about, because it's very easy to know what to do but not necessarily
to actually implement it and do it. And I think you're right, it's how the language we use to other people, does that mean the same to them as what it means to you? Like, instead of saying, you know, I'm sorry, maybe like, I need.
Oh yeah.
That was what you were saying, wasn't it? And I was like, oh, that's genius. Like, and you know, allowing their boundaries too. Like, you're setting your kind of boundaries that ultimately means that you're meeting them halfway. Yeah. And that
a lot of the time, if we would sit back and say, would I have this expectation of the other person?
Yeah. Do they have capacity? Do they have capacity to talk to me right now? Is something you were saying, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
is that what you mean?
And I think putting yourself in the other person's shoes as well when it comes to boundaries, like, how would I feel if someone said, oh, I can get back to you tomorrow? I'd be like, thank you very much. I'm glad that they are actually responding. Like, you know, so putting yourself in the other person's shoes is always quite nice, because we make it out to be something huge, and in the grand scheme of things, it may just saying no might not be so challenging for them.
I think often we kind of forget that we may have been overthinking how they're responding to what we're saying.
Yeah.
They may not have been.
No.
So by kind of establishing that, oh, I consider that you probably have been working at this or something. Do you have capacity to take on this?
Yeah.
It's introducing that different way of talking, isn't it? Which is just so beneficial. So I think this kind of like, this comes back to kind of like, what are these kind of measures that we can put in place, and being realistic, and like preventative measures that kind of make sure that we can sort of, you know, carry on with this. And I think we were saying that there's, you know, what works for you? Is it like reminders, or you know, is it writing things on a wall that you see every day to kind of like remind yourself like to do a certain thing, or is it the putting the out of office on, or is it putting that social media post up that says like, just bear with?
So all the things we know we're supposed to do that we don't do. I mean,
they can be flexible as well, like you say. Like, they don't need to be rigid rules. Like, they're just helpful reminders.
I think the first thing to tackle is your mindset about boundaries, and practicing like honesty, and suggesting how you feel. I mean, a lot of it, I think, if you were to tell people how you feel about something, then they will have much more understanding. And I've sat there before thinking, oh gosh, people want this from me, and it makes me anxious. And when I kind of think about the response that I might give, and I work through, oh, what if I say that would be more valid, blah blah blah, and I come back around to thinking, oh, it's actually the honest answer is what I need to give them.
Because actually, like, what you kind of realise you get into the habit of saying is, oh, I'm busy, or I have no time, and actually you're worried then, oh, am I constantly saying that, and then they'll never ask me again.
Exactly.
Like, that's a realistic kind of like fear to have, and actually it doesn't need to be like that. It can be, it doesn't have to be a blunt no, it can be a yes, but when I have more time, or when I've got the capacity to take that on.
And also I think it's important that we have compassion, and it may not be to do with time, it might be to do with, you know, well-being,
health.
And those things are really important to be honest about. We keep talking about being honest about them, but in the workplace it's quite difficult.
It's really difficult to communicate that, especially when you work outside of institutions where you're the one being your HR, you're the one being your whole kind of like way you communicate, and how you make those kind of safety, like safeguarding kind of measures for yourself and your well-being. And if you're not kind of telling someone, actually I'm dealing with a lot right now, and and there's a few health things that I have to prioritise, and then that it does shift it. You don't have to reveal everything. You're not completely like, that's another boundary, isn't it? It's just like keeping, you know, got to keep like some.
That's such a weird one. I remember us talking about it before, because I was kind of like, well, yeah, where do you draw a line? Because there is giving away information about yourself, and yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
You want to protect your kind of like, yourself as well.
What are we protecting ourselves from though? And that's the thing. I think it is weird, and obviously that's another problem with boundaries when you are your business. So like, as an artist, I make work about myself and my identity, and so it's a package.
Yeah, it comes all as one. There's clearly like some really great ways of implementing these things. Yeah. But like you say, you have to kind of be the accountability for each other to kind of remind each other that that's okay. And if we start this kind of shift of putting in these measures, then it will have a ripple effect, hopefully. Yeah, I think it already has done. Yeah. Like we can see it in everyone else.
Yeah, and identifying your limits is the first thing, isn't it? Because and they might be flexible. So I think we also think, oh, you know, I did this one day, you know, I responded to that email straight away, so therefore, you know, you create those expectations. But I think that is, you know, being fine about them, being flexible.
And some days you can achieve a huge amount of work on one day, and that in some way is a blessing and a curse, because it can be amazing and you've achieved so much, but then if that's in relation to other people, they then know how quickly you could potentially turn something around.
Exactly.
That then on a bad day is really overwhelming and like daunting, and it's kind of learning your kind of like your rhythm, I guess, and just learning like where you work best or how you work best.
And I think just being comfortable with the flexibility of that, and I think a lot of it is about fluidity and like a bit more of a holistic approach, and recognising that is how we work now. It's and especially as like self-employed or as a business, you have to think outside the box, and no 2 days are going to be the same.
Like you say, where they are so varied, like the days can be really different. If there's some constants that can really help on it, like just kind of bring that back to maybe that's one of the things, like to be proactive about. Maybe there is something that comes in as a daily new routine that helps you bring things back, like going for a walk or something like that. Certain, like fitting that in,
making sure you have your lunch. You know, because you have to set those boundaries, like we were saying, with yourself to make sure that you're looking after yourself, and then other people will understand when it is okay and it isn't okay. I mean, I think it's okay for anyone to contact me via email anytime, but know that I won't respond to it. That's the thing.
And that's it as well, like having that kind of the communicating, like you say. So if someone, I've had it before when I've been messaged on, say, Messenger or Instagram, and it's in relation to something that I'm working on that's different, and I do have to kind of say these are my personal platforms, so I don't actually use them within business time or whatever work time, but please email me on and I'll get back to you when I'm next in, or something like that, or when I'm next working.
And if that came through to me, I'd be like, oh gosh, whoops, I should it would immediately make me feel bad. Not bad. No, it wouldn't make me feel bad, but it would make me reflect upon what my actions were. It wouldn't actually make me think, oh God, Philippa's right pain in the butt. Do you know what I mean? But that's how it goes back to our preconceptions of how we think people will respond. And
I think for me, it's actually been a hugely positive step. Like it means that I get my social media chats and conversations like how I want to keep them, like for my personal use and not for work use. Exactly. And it's so much more like in my control.
It's streamlined though, and it helps other people. This is what we have to remember, is that by putting those boundaries in, we're not just helping ourselves, we are actually helping other people. because then the people that need the response are going to get the response. And I've had that a million times where you're scrolling through and you're like, did I write that on Facebook, or what, did we talk on Instagram, or was it email?
Yeah, so
I think we have to
keeping up with your
then
management.
It takes longer for me to get back to people. We talked about deadlines. You're really good at this, but
well, just being clear on what is being asked of you, and does that include an expectation on like when that needs to be done by, and if you can sometimes write it all out and present it to them and just say, is this what you meant? Or you don't have to wait for the other person to kind of conjure up all of these kind of like expectations that you need. You can also establish that. So if you've had a conversation with someone and it's kind of clear that you're needed to do something but not exceptionally clear, then you can always like write that out in like an email and just say like, is this the deadline that you would have had thought, and I'll put that in my diary, and just checking this is all okay with you, I guess, isn't it?
Basically so really there should be a set sort of list in your mind of things you need to know before you
on
can
each
work
project.
on
have you gone through your checklist?
And that would be good.
Checklist.
I'm thinking of these out loud, thinking that's something I could do.
So we've got a checklist on each project or task that we do. For us both, this is a huge topic, and it comes ultimately down to us respecting and protecting ourselves. And you kind of get bruised a little bit, don't you, from your past experiences, and this is us trying and attempting to be proactive and hopefully helping some other people too. I think there are some tools that we kind of like have mentioned through this, and I'm guessing a lot of people already know those, but maybe this serves as like a little reminder to us, to people
and
listening.
The thing is, the more people that do these things, the easier it becomes, because then they are just expectations that we all have. Of ourselves and each other, and it's really hard to be the outsider that's setting boundaries without wanting to look like, what you're asking is that you're unreasonable or you're bullshit or
I think we've kind of like mentioned quite a few times how this all links together. We kind of like trap ourselves in some circles of how we respond, then how we act, then implements how we then respond and act again. And if we're constantly doing it in a negative way, where we're constantly obliging to other people's expectations, we're constantly, feeling like we need to be doing something in a certain way, we then act and then respond in that way too. It's just reinforcing that. And also everyone that we're working with, to let them know that you are also fully okay with doing everything.
I think people want to work with humans, and they want to know that not everything works out the way that you expect. And offering apologies is something that you have to do sometimes, but not all the time.
And it's okay. That's the thing. You want to give permission to yourself that if you are unable to do something, that's okay, and that you'd expect that of someone else, and you would be fine with someone else saying that to you.
Exactly.
So why can't you say it to someone?
And a lot of the time we're putting this pressure on ourselves. But also another thing that we mentioned, I think you mentioned this, was offering alternatives, so like suggesting other people or other ways, so like you're offering a solution rather than being the solution yourself, you're kind of presenting other solutions. I think that's quite really valuable, because you're helping other people, then you're connecting people with other people, and there goes more
the
of
last
my
of them all.
But overall I feel quite positive, and I think there's a lot of small things that you can do to start with, that I am going to try. And this accountability thing, maybe we need to keep in touch and see how it's going.
Oh,
great. Oh, thank you. And thanks for the yummy tea.
Thank you for the yummy company. Is that weird?
Ditto.